tired, sad, lonely, ashamed, afraid, sick to my stomach, tired of knowing what's going to happen next. I'm Mary Jo Ross, and I have something to say. If you are also a survivor, you probably have some of the same feelings I did during what I call my 17 years in hell. I survived child sexual abuse starting as an infant. I had 4 family members pimp me out, and I was also in a generational satanic cult. My message to you is that no matter what you've been through, that it is possible to get through it. It may take a while or a long time. It's not easy, but it is possible to get to the other side and have a great life. I became a victim when I was just a baby. Mom liked molesting children. Boys or girls, didn't matter. And obviously I don't remember that, but I do know I witnessed it happening with my younger siblings. My dad also sexually abused me. The first time I remember was 3 years old. My mom, dad, older sister, and granddaddy pimped me out. Dad also beat up mom on a regular basis. When he'd start in on her, she'd start yelling, and I would run upstairs to the closet and hide, try to be invisible. Because it didn't matter how many times those deputies came zooming up the driveway, jumping out, leaving the car running to the door, Mom would never press charges. She'd also never go to the doctor afterward. What happened after the deputies left was it was worse. Dad would take it out some more on Mom, but he'd also be very violent toward whichever kid had called 911. After that, Mom was awful, and it was so much violence between each other, but she didn't do so much of the physical. Hers was more psychological. Through the years, us kids wanted them to get a divorce. Mom went to priests and counselors and psychiatrists and, all sorts of people, and they all told her to leave, that she wouldn't do it. I understand now it was because not only did she have some mental issues, physically she wasn't able to do a lot, and there was no way she could support herself or us. I found out later that Dad had, with his 30-06 in his closet, had told her that if she ever left, he would shoot all of us in front of her and then her. I just want you to know, survivor to survivor, that it is possible to have a good life. There are options. There are people out there who will care and support you along your way. Listening to my gut, or my God instinct as I call it, helps keep me alive. So please listen to yours and pay attention. If you currently support survivors in any way or would like to help, there are 4 things I would like you to do. Number 1 is stop. Stop and listen to your gut. That instinct is there for a reason. It means something's not quite right. And if you don't stop and pay attention, then it's really easy to overlook things that might be going on around you. In my family, I'm the second oldest of 6 kids. My older sister was 10 years older, and then my younger siblings. In the town I grew up, people had to have known that something was going on in my family. My dad bought a lot at the liquor store. My mom was mentally ill. My dad also abused prescription drugs. Step 2 is look. So you stop, and then you look. Pay attention. Not only do you hear words, but you hear what's unsaid. Look at body language. As a kid on your son's baseball team, duck if anybody comes toward him or her. As a child, hiding in the corner or exhausted. Does it look like family normal behavior? Do they laugh and joke? There's always serious. Do the kids have friends? I couldn't. Or at least I couldn't have any that I could bring home because I could never trust that something wouldn't happen to them. Look for kids who are getting bullied. I was a straight A student, and yet I got bullied. But that was my only safe place. It's just not just acting out kids that you want to look for. It's also their siblings. Request number 3 is to listen. What I've found is children who report something going on don't make up abuse, and you may be the only one they ever tell. So if they tell you something, please pay attention, acknowledge, say, I'm sorry that happened, I believe you, and then go from there. I know adults in their 60s and 70s who are just now speaking up and telling me, at least somebody, about the abuse. They've lost a lot of years, a lot of quality of life, a lot of things, because when they did try to speak up, they were ignored or blown off. Someone didn't care or believe them. This also goes to those in professional positions. For me, I remembered all the violence and stuff like that, and drinking and getting pimped out and all that kind of stuff. And I remember it now, but there was a period of time where I blocked it out. It was just like there were just a few snapshots. But I was 23, 24, and I started having dreams and just flashbacks and started flooding. I was in a bad marriage, but I decided, I had a small child, that I was not going to let him grow up and be exposed to all the things I had gone through. So I worked up the nerve to call the doctor's office, because I had to have a referral. I tell the receptionist what I want, which I said, I've been sexually abused and I need help. He puts me on the phone, I have to wait a while. And then his nurse comes on. Why are you calling? I said, because I've been sexually abused. She treated me like I was scum of the earth, that I should never have said those words. She shamed me. But she did schedule an appointment for me 3 weeks out. Normally I could get in a couple days. Get to the doctor's office, and they put me in more of an office, not a patient room, and I'm not sure why. But I'm sitting in a chair, and then he comes in, and there's a wall of windows across the room. And he keeps his back toward me and walks and talks, looking out those windows. So why are you here? I tell him the same thing. He pokes and pries and won't even look at me. And besides at that much, I had too much going on. I couldn't really articulate anything. Well, that went on for a while. And then he turned around and said, I don't believe you. You're making this up. But he realized I was not leaving that room without a referral. So he finally said, well, I know a female psychiatrist. Would you be willing to see her? I said, yes, sure, anything. And as a psychiatrist, if you've ever seen one, usually the first time you see him, it's for an hour, and then just 15-minute increments after that. Well, I go into her office and sit down. I said, why are you here? I said, I've been sexually abused, and I need a referral. I need help. Grilled me, just like my family doctor had. But she was looking at me, and a few minutes into it, she said, I was lying, I was making it up for attention, and I was wasting her time. I wasn't even in her office 10 minutes before I was escorted out. I was devastated. I had to keep pulling over because I was crying so hard on the way back home. So I went into the community mental health center. I was in crisis, so a counselor saw me, calmed me down, and we talked for a while. I said, I need help. And she said, your doctor said it didn't happen, so we can't do anything for you. She eventually said that there's a 12-week adult children of alcoholics group coming up starting the next day or the next week. And I said, okay, I'll take it, because that was this much of the problem, but at least it was something. So I got to know the social worker who was leading the group over a period of time. And he's the one who eventually introduced me to my therapist, Carol, who could deal with the SRA, the child sexual abuse, all that other stuff. But it took a long while and a lot of persistence to do it. Because of my children, I had a second one by then, I did not want them to be exposed to anything, be around anybody. I had to sever ties with my complete biological family 32, 33 years ago. That's a gaping hole, but I made it through. I broke that cycle. My boys were never exposed to any of the things that I was, but it took a long time to find somebody who would believe me. For my safety, I ended up going through a divorce, and for my safety and my son's safety, we had to go underground to safe houses a couple times. I had to make sure that if something happened to me, that it would be investigated. Because I really didn't want my kids to be exposed to my family at all. So I had a social worker and an attorney and all these people that helped support me in this, but I had to go public because that's the last thing people with the cult, people with abuse going on want. They don't want secrets exposed. So I had to be brave, and I did. I was interviewed by a radio station which also did like 6 or 7 more episodes with a priest and law enforcement and just all these different psychiatrists, all these different things. So it was a series. I also got for the nearest city's radio station and was interviewed on that. But it wasn't easy, but I did it. It is possible. And when you have a cause like I did, you can make it happen. After I had done the radio interviews, a lady contacted me and asked if I'd be willing to talk to law enforcement. And I was hesitant because I'd had law enforcement abuse me. But I agreed. And so we met for a couple hours and had a 2-hour conversation. And it was with the lieutenant of Sedgwick County Sheriff's Office in Wichita at the time. After a couple hours, he got up, stood up, I stood up, he walked toward me, and he looked me in the eyes, and he said, "I believe you." That was the first time in 24 years that somebody had said that. That made such an impact on me. He's still my hero. Those 3 words can make a huge difference. My 4th and final request is that you plan your action. It may not be something at the time. It might be something down the road. When you see something funny going on, maybe there's a neighbor kid who's going to a single man's house down the road. Their parents aren't home. If you see older guys and younger girls, and they have fancy outfits on and their nails are done designer things, probably have another cell phone. Pay attention. And what's really important is that when you see something wrong or something's just not right, write it down, document the day, the time, the location. And if you're able, without them knowing, take pictures. If you can get a driver's license plate, take a picture of that. Description of their car. Look for tattoos. Look for other marks. Is there something that will help you identify them in the future if you needed to, or help law enforcement identify them? It's important if you see something going on that you do not go to that person, the adult or the child, directly. That is something that will need to be reported. Keep in mind that the reason why I'm asking you to document all these things is because you're going to be asked a lot of questions when you make that call. They're going to want to know names, parent name, address, or addresses of where it's going on, name of the adult if you have it, or the other older children or whatever it is, the perpetrator, or you suspected perpetrator. They're going to want to know that. They're going to want to know what time of day, where were you, where were they. They'll ask a whole lot of questions. So it's important to pay attention and document. There's hotlines and there's different things you can do to report to. Sometimes law enforcement is appropriate. Sometimes if it's a child, you have to report to the state first. It's up to you. I don't know everybody's counties or where you live, any of that, how things work in your country or your state. You need to follow guidelines. But just keep in mind that it's a lot better to report that something's wrong than not to do so, because you could have saved a child's life. You do not want to talk to them. And once again, you do not want to talk to the people involved directly, because not only will that child probably get hurt more, but you're putting your life in danger. It is so important for people who are being abused to have somebody on the outside that cares, that's paying attention. So please follow my requests of stop, look, listen, and choose your path. Thank you for listening. I'm Mary Jo Ross. You can find me at maryjoross.com. Thank you.